Josh, May versus June, where we currently are in the cycles, and more importantly, what we expect for the upcoming June cycle. What we saw this week was probably the closeout of the May cycle. And just to be clear, we've got both a bull case and a bear case to present on GME. But my suspicion is, and just so everyone's aware of this, be prepared for GME to slide back down again. What we're seeing right now at the end of May, this is probably not moass. But hear me out. There's a silver lining to this. The end of the May cycle seems to leave us optimally positioned for an excellent June cycle. Will that be moass? Perhaps, perhaps not. But my argument is that whether it is moass or it is not moass, there are ways to profit tremendously from this by just simply knowing how to play the cycle. And in the process of playing the cycle, if you do have moass, you'll get caught up in that anyways. Josh, here's what I mean by this. Think back to last June of what happened. You had GameStop actually issuing more shares. Theoretically, you're not going to see that happen this time around. Again, that's not to be confused with a split or a stock dividend. Just set that aside for 1 second. But you don't see that happening. You see borrow rates continuing to remain elevated. You see
elevations. I mean, not just elevations, it's higher than they were in the January of 2021 first squeeze type of situation.
You see XRT remaining on the threshold list. In other words, synthetic share creation, probably the short's favorite go-to modus operandi to managing the short position. If they can still do it, they don't seem to be able to do it nearly to the extent they can do so before. Also consider what happened on Wednesday and Thursday. And it is true, this run that we had this week is probably retail FOMOing in, and I expect it to crash back down. That's the bad news. But the good news is that it still shows retail has extreme interest on this. And what's more, because of this extreme interest, I suspect that the shorts, and hat tip to Python on this, would want to start covering their obligations from the lowest level they possibly can. But the more interest they have, the more buying that actually occurs, the more they send the price down. So if they send GME down to 80, 70, or even 60 or whatever, right, people start buying into the thing, and this creates its own set of problems for the shorts. But at the same time, because you had this run up right now, it's suddenly on people's mind. It's much more near and dear to people's hearts. It's on the forefront of things. So whether or not that will create an impact, I don't know. But my suspicion is that if I were short and I needed a way to get the stock down in a quiet, boring, non-volatile way, my path to do so, I'm not saying there's not still a path to do so, but I think my path to do so is now a harder path to navigate. In the short term, my expectation is, and this is how I've been playing it, is that I do expect to see GME go down. I think we close to 130-ish today. Expect it, to slowly drift down. Expect it to probably continue. I mean, of course, anything can happen, but just that's my take. And when it does drift down, the way you want to think about it is this is excellent because however you want to play the cycles or however you want to position yourself for moass, GME being cheaper, especially if you think it's going to be a run coming up, it's a gift. If you want to buy more shares and DRS them, you can buy your shares and DRS them for cheaper. If you want to go into options, you can go into options at a lower price and presumably a lower IV if you give things enough time to calm down. And however, my point is, if you're bullish on GME, however you want to play it, GME going down, especially if you think you've got an edge in terms of understanding these quarterly cycles, use that to your advantage. And if you use it to your advantage, whether you've got moass, whether you've got a run up, you'll be doing better off at the end. And even if we don't have moass in June, at least you walk away with more money in your pocket. And with that more money in your pocket, you can buy more shares of GME and get yourself positioned for the next quarterly run up. If that's moass, great. If not, play that cycle too. How do you lose?
I think the quarterly run up is going to happen late June, maybe early August. And what we are really expecting, we have the shareholder meeting this upcoming week. I have absolutely no clue what's going to happen with that. I have zero edge, but what I do know is that's what everyone's watching. And Ryan Coleman could potentially have some very slick wording and maybe do that share dividend split, which not to be confused with actually adding shares. It is going to potentially cause FOMO. And that's what the main driver of that would be, is more retail FOMO in, and more importantly, we see some institutional buy-ins because as the FOMO builds, and every single metric that we've seen in the past is higher than it was during all previous other cycles, which is very, very good news. And we're going to be starting at a higher low. Usually these cycles, before the cycle starts, we're starting at a lower low from the previous cycle start. This one, we're most likely going to see a higher low from the start. Maybe we start at 100, 110, maybe it goes down to 90, 80 before the cycle begins. But either way, it's going to be at a higher low. Borrow rates are absolutely astronomically through the roof. And we're seeing many other signs that this could be a very primal position, if not for a moass style event, but for a much higher quarterly run up than we've seen in a very long time. I don't know if that means we go for 250, 300. Once we really start to get running and FOMO starts building, it's more of a feedback loop of everyone trying to pile in. I don't know if we're going to see that or not. Best case scenario, yes, absolutely. But we don't have the option volume for that right now. Currently, the open interest is like 280,000 call contracts. I don't know how many people have sold puts, but that is not nearly enough for what we need for a moass style event. This is not moass, not yet at least. But if we do see that extreme, let's say Wall Street Bets comes back and extreme Twitter is just flooding about GME news articles start to come back, that is what you would need ideally, and one of these firms start to blow up. We don't have that for the current option cycles, but that is not to say we won't see it after the next few weeks of extreme focus on the actual stock. So right now, currently looking at it, I do not think this will be moass, but my opinion will change very, very quickly looking at the option chain going into this next few weeks.
Absolutely. Josh, the way I would describe it is that there are many things that are necessary to create moass. And even though those things are necessary, they're not necessarily sufficient. Example, you need retail interest to be extreme. This is a necessary, I think, condition for moass, but it's not sufficient. You just can't have extreme retail interest. You've got to have all these other things. We've said it before, so I'm not going to go through it again. But again, the concept of necessary but not sufficient things all have to align. So even if this is just like a little appetizer of what's to come, and even if GME does go back down before you see the June run up, my attitude is treat it as a gift from God. Use it to better position yourself. And again, however you want to play it, whether you're an options guy, whether you're a buy and hold guy, whether you're a DS, it doesn't matter. The point is, if the price goes down and you remain bullish on GME, learn how to use that to your advantage.
Especially, Justin's probably made more money from playing the off cycle this past quarter than he has during any other cycle because it can be so ridiculously profitable. So if you are someone who is interested in learning about these option cycles, you must do so because it is so extremely profitable, especially if you have shares that you can do covered calls, then you can start to write puts. I mean, there are so many different things that you can do during off of these cycles. Just don't play it and then when the cycles do come up, then these calls will be so through the roof that it's just insane. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you guys were picking up calls over the past few weeks, and they are up tremendously right now. I've sold most of my short-term ones because I do not think this is, I think the price will go down just because this is just a little sneezer for what's to come in June. But, and especially next week, I think earnings, hopefully we see a very good buying opportunity where I would like to pick up quite a few, maybe September at the money calls, which I will be playing the next June cycle with. That's pretty much what I'm doing and what I'm looking at. Justin, any last thoughts?
No, Josh, but I would say it's just kind of like mentally brace yourself. This is probably not moass, and if the price goes back down, so be it. Use it to your advantage. Capitalize on it.
Yeah, definitely not financial advice, what we were talking about right now, because we are complete rubletons that blow up every single trading account possible. Thank you, guys.
Justin, earlier this week, I'm looking at you. Don't be a dumbass. Set trailing stop limits, idiot.